The results of the final round of Level 1 CFA exams for 2021 have been released. The pass rate was just 27%, which is not an improvement from the numbers that we saw throughout the year. The majority of Level 1 candidates who had their exams deferred because of the pandemic have now taken their exams. And we've had a whole new calendar year of candidates come into the CFA program and take their Level 1 exam for the very first time. At this point, it is becoming obvious that the pass rates are not going to be returning to their old normals anytime soon. So, unless the CFA Institute claims that even the brand new candidates now are on average far less capable than other brand new candidates of years past, then they're gonna have to take some responsibility and explain other reasons why the pass rates have been so low this year. Now, I don't exactly know what's changed. I have a couple theories, and we'll talk about those later on in this video, so make sure to stick around for those. But the Institute might know what's changed, and they need to be more transparent about whether they do or not, and if so, what it is. There's probably going to be a similar video to this one when the last round of Level 2 exams for 2021 post their results next week, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss that one. There's one good way that we can be pretty confident that the pass rates have dropped for even first-time test takers at this point, which, by the way, means that everything the CFA Institute has publicly said over the last 6 months about the pass rates being so low is not really fair. They have been saying that those who have had their exams rescheduled because of the pandemic have shown far lower pass rates, so they're sort of putting the blame on that uncontrollable factor. But if it were still the case that only those who have had an exam deferred are showing lower pass rates and candidates sitting for the first time are showing normal pass rates like they may have 2 years ago, then that would mean that those candidates who were deferred actually are showing a pass rate of like somewhere south of 10% now. Shout out to Mark Meldrum's video from several weeks ago for that math. And a less than 10% pass rate for any demographic of CFA Level 1 candidates is not super believable, especially when that very demographic has had more time to prepare for their Level 1 exams than almost any demographic of Level 1 candidates in the entire history of the CFA program. I'm just not buying it. Despite the videos the Institute has put out, we know that these low pass rates are in fact affecting everyone, which is why I say that they're likely not going to be improving anytime soon unless the Institute were to make some drastic changes overnight before the February exams. What changed with your exams, CFA? We need to know. People are talking about this all over the internet, especially on Reddit. Like, CFA charter holders and candidates are generally smart people who are able to use deductive reasoning here. With us knowing that it's very likely something has changed with the CFA exams, how they're administered, how they're graded, something along those lines, the Institute needs to own up to those changes and just communicate at least to the fact that something has changed a bit, and then hopefully be transparent about what those changes were so that candidates can best prepare for this challenge that they're undertaking. And for them to know what they're up against, we need to hear about what the CFA Institute is seeing in the numbers of the results. If they don't address what I'll call this new reality with the pass rates, then that can only lead us to believe that even the CFA Institute themselves may not even totally understand why these pass rates have been so low. Maybe they can't pinpoint what has been harder about the question, or they can't see why the standard setting process is resulting in a higher minimum passing score. As a side point, that option wouldn't make much sense to me, because I would say, okay, just lower the minimum passing score back to the historically normal levels over the past couple decades, but whatever. Either way, they need to be more transparent about why they think or why they know the pass rates are much lower right now, and own up to any changes that they've intentionally made or made for different reasons and then unintentionally have had these results of far less candidates being able to clear their introductory and second and third exams. One of the theories about why the questions might be more difficult now than they used to be is that the people writing the questions are asking about minute details that are kind of buried between the lines in pages and pages of text later on in the LOSs, rather than asking questions that are more core to the topics being questioned in the chapters. If that theory were correct, I would be pretty surprised, because it seems like the opposite thing you would want to do if you write an exam that used to have 240 questions and got shrunk down under the new computer-based testing method to 180 questions. When there's less questions on an exam, you really should be asking more general questions, because you have less real estate to test that a candidate actually knows everything that's important to your material. For example, if you were going to ask very, very few questions, you would need to make them very broad questions. But if you had 10,000 questions you were going to ask and you were going to examine a candidate for a week straight, then you could dig into all these tiny little details amongst the text. And of course, that exam would be extremely difficult. It sounds like maybe that's sort of what they've done, which is sort of the opposite of what was more logical when there became fewer questions on the exams. Another theory is that there's an inherent flaw in the CBT model in general. Maybe now that it's tested on a computer and they can give every candidate a different order or a different set of questions, it's not consistent enough, and no two candidates are seeing the same exam. So maybe it's more difficult to judge the score of a candidate who got a certain set of questions compared to a candidate who got a totally different set of questions, even though all questions came from the approved pool of exam questions for that day or that sitting. It could be adding in other variables with the scoring, how the equating works that they described in one of the videos they put out a few months ago. If that were the case, we would like to know, hey, maybe the CFA Institute comes out and says, there has been issues in the administration of this type of an exam under a computer-based testing method. In 2 years, we're going to go back to paper tests and explain how that process is going to happen. Whatever it is, we need to hear more about it. The last theory, I don't know if it's really that strong, but it's just the one that I've personally been throwing out there since the beginning of this whole thing started in 2021, when we saw extremely low pass rates. And that is that the people grading the exams and setting the standards now under the modified Angoff standard setting method process are much more difficult than they have been in the past. And they have determined a level that a minimally qualified candidate, which is the term that the CFA Institute uses, that is far higher than the level of the minimally qualified candidate has been in the past, because those graders were more lenient and were okay with candidates with this level of aptitude or understanding of the material getting through, and now they're holding them to a higher standard. Of course, that does not sound like a fair scenario, but it could be something that's going on with the Institute. It seems like if that were the case, they would just get a better handle on how people are deciding what questions a minimally qualified candidate would be able to answer, and doing better coaching with the graders on things like that, or the standard setters on things like that. But actually, that theory is best at answering why the minimum passing scores might be a lot higher now, which 300hours.com continues to say is the case throughout all of 2021. And I think it's very likely to assume that it has in fact gone up like 8% from where it was, say, when I passed the exam like 5 or 6 years ago. The first two theories don't do quite as good of a job at answering why the MPS would be a lot higher. That third theory does, because they're setting a higher standard, and so you have to get like a 76% just to pass. It's interesting now when you look at the breakdown of scoring from candidates who did clear this November 2021 CFA Level 1 exam, and those just above the minimum passing score line are almost also at the 90th percentile, it looks like. So it's crazy to think that to be in the top 26% to actually pass the exam, you are like very, very close even to the top 90th percent, which is pretty daunting if I'm a candidate, because I'm thinking, wow, if I really want to be prepared, I basically have to be getting in the top 90th percentile on these practice exams to know that I'm going to be safe. That's not an easy thing to do against the very educated and talented pool of CFA candidates out there. Look, I don't know which of those theories might be right, but that's sort of the issue and the point I'm making in this video. We should know which of those theories is the problem, or if none of them are, and if it's something else. The Institute should be telling us about what's going on, rather than continuing to try to blame the pandemic, which is now relatively clear that it's not the only issue at hand with these low pass rates. If you're a candidate and you're getting really concerned by this, I feel for you. I probably would be too, but you have to realize people are still passing this thing. You certainly can still pass this thing. Sure, you can say you probably have a lower probability than you would have 5 years ago, but even 5 years ago, the probability was still low, right? Like, not more than half of people were passing these exams ever, especially when you look at, getting through all 3 exams. That number was always much lower. And even though it's gotten more difficult, it hasn't gotten impossible. So if I'm a candidate, I'm just going to be working as hard as I possibly can, doing as many mock exams in the final 2 months, doing all the practice questions, blue boxes, EOCs, all the things I talk about that I did when I was a candidate that I think prepared me really well, and I tell everyone who's studying to do. Those are all the things that's going to set you apart, and now you need to even do those more than maybe someone like myself did them, and set yourself further apart from the majority of the pack to make sure that you're going to be able to clear this new reality. Please don't forget to drop a like down on this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications if you haven't done either of those things yet already. Like I said, I'll have another video coming out likely next week about the level 2 pass rates. We'll see what those are, probably going to be low again. As always, thanks for watching.